Welcome to the channel. Today's episode we're going to be finishing up this RX7 repair, so stay tuned. Alright, so the Porsche parts came in, we got that car completed and off the frame machine. So now we can put that RX7 up there and start working on it. But before we do, I want to go over a few things with the car, kind of give you an idea of why we're doing what we're doing. Now you may be thinking to yourself, we had a perfectly good chassis, why do we not take all of the race car parts and put them into the chassis, the donor car, and basically have a new race car? The problem is you have to pay to have a cage put in, you have to pay to have the cage painted, there's time and money associated with that, there's time associated with rewiring the car. You're basically building a car from the ground up. So, and even once you get past that hurdle, the setup on the car is not going to be the same. It's a new car. They all handle a little bit different, so you're going to have a learning curve there for how to set the car up. And I think there's a lot of sentimental value associated with this white car because it does have a lot of race history and it's a tried and true chassis. So the customer wanted to go that route, so that's the route we went. Now, you also may be thinking that impact didn't look bad enough to replace the whole front clip. And in most cases, it wouldn't be. You take an impact like that, and it would crumple the frame rails a little bit, maybe bend them, and you could pull them back out, massage the frame rails, put new parts on it, and you should be fine. But in this case, this car having the race history that it has, it's been in more than one incident, and the frame rails have been bent and then bent back, and someone at some point put braces on the frame rails. They reinforced it with a heavier gauge metal, actually bolted it on and riveted it on. So that stiffens the frame rails up really good, but that can be a problem in a unibody car because the frame rails on a unibody car are designed to bend or crumple in a front impact. They're supposed to absorb the energy of the impact and not transfer that energy to the driver's compartment. And when you reinforce the frame rails, you stiffen them up, they don't crumple, they don't bend like they are designed to bend, and it transfers that energy to the driver's compartment. And in this case, it transferred the energy on the right rail mostly to the firewall and bent the firewall in a little bit. So, in order for us to get a hold of that frame rail and pull out so we can get that, the firewall pulled out, we're going to have to cut the front of the frame rails off, grab that frame rail, and pull out to where we can get the firewall to where it's supposed to be. And since we're going to go that far, the frame rails are kind of ugly, they're braced up, they've been bumped a few times, so we opted to go ahead and just replace them with the new donor car stuff. Now, while we get it up on the frame machine, what we're going to do is we're going to measure out the tub, make sure the tub is where it's supposed to be. We measured it while it was on the lift, but we're going to measure it again once it's on the clamps. We can get our height and everything. All our datum lines are right. So once we get that on, we'll cut that front end off, get everything pulled, and then we can start cutting off everything from the firewall forward and getting ready to start putting that new stuff on. So let's get it up on the frame machine and get to work. Alright, so we've got it on the clamps. Now we can get the front suspension taken off, and we'll go ahead and get the sheet metal taken off as well. We're underneath the car measuring out everything, and we noticed that the right frame rail on the bottom has a dent in it, and it's more than likely from a floor jack or something. I don't think it's from this accident, but since we're down there, we're going to go ahead and weld a snatcher or a slide hammer to it see if we can get that pulled down and make it look a little better. So when we were pulling on the frame rail, the firewall came out perfectly where it's supposed to be. So now we can start cutting off this front clip. Now we're going to be cutting it off a little bit different than we did on the donor car, because we have to be mindful of where we're cutting and grinding, because we don't want to damage the firewall, because that part is staying on this car and we're not replacing it. We got this whole front clip cut off, so now what we need to do is go ahead and get this thing ready to put the new front clip on. We're going to do that by cleaning off any paint or seam sealer residue that's going to be in the area that we're going to be welding. Alright, so we got this front end sitting up here. Got it held on with some clamps. Got a scissor jack kind of supporting the front end. And this thing is fit to measurements. Everything is perfectly set where it needs to be as far as measurements go. But we're going to put some screws in it, kind of hold it in place so we can take those clamps off. And hang some panels like the fenders and the hood so we can make sure everything lines up gap-wise. It's always a good idea to measure everything, make sure everything's good measurement-wise, and then hang some parts, make sure all the gaps are good and everything fits right. Because once you weld this front end on, it's really a big deal to try to take it back off and realign anything. We got the sheet metal bolted on this thing along with the front bumper, and all the gaps look good. We went ahead and measured the front end again just to make sure nothing moved while we were assembling it. Everything looks really good, so I feel pretty confident that we can weld this thing together. So let's get all the sheet metal taken back off and start welding. So these strut towers are a little bit different than the ones we took off. The openings are larger and the holes are elongated. Let me show you. You can see here the center hole is bigger and the holes that bolt up are elongated. And this was done for the caster camber plate that's put on the car. So what we're going to do is cut this piece out, make basically a template so we'll know how to cut the ones that are on the car. Alright, so now that we've got the strut towers cut out using these templates, we've got the plates bolted on, we can go ahead and start putting on the suspension. We've got the front end pretty much buttoned up. Now the customer does want me to paint the firewall white, but before we get to that, there's a couple of dents in the right quarter panel that he wants us to repair also. So we're going to go ahead and fix those and get them primed. We've got that front end completed. We've got that quarter panel repaired. Let's get that RX7 off the frame machine, get it over here on the lift so we can get it taped up, and I can get that firewall painted. Alright, so we got this all taped up. I'm going to put some seam sealer on these seams, and then we'll start spraying some white. Alright, so the customer painted this front clip before we ever got the parts car. We've got it all cut off, and we've got it welded on the new car, and the customer asked me to go ahead and spray the firewall. We've got it all taped up. We're going to seam seal all the seams, and I'm going to spray this firewall white. This thing's all taped up, the firewall is all scuffed with a red pad. I've already put the seam sealer on it, so we're going to be spraying one coat of white sealer on there first, and it's such a small area, I'm not even going to put my paint suit on. Let's go paint. We've got our one coat of white sealer sprayed on there. We gave it a 15-minute flash time, so now we're ready to start spraying some single stage. We're going to be putting on 2 coats of this white single stage with a 15-minute flash time in between coats. Alright, so I got that last coat of single stage sprayed on there. Let's go look it over really well, make sure I don't need to do anything to it before I clean out my paint gun. If it looks good, we'll come back and clean out my paint gun, give it a few hours to dry off, and then we can untape it and start putting it back together. Alright, so we've got it put together. Now the customer's going to come pick it up and have the engine and transmission put in it, and he's going to do some of the work himself, like he's going to paint the right quarter panel, and he's going to do the final assembly on some of the smaller stuff. He was kind enough to send me some photographs of the process, and if I don't say so myself, the car turned out great. Now I understand that he's had it on track twice since the repair, and the car scaled out perfectly and is as fast and it handles as good, if not better, than it did before.
This is starting to remind me when I was 16, cheap gas, and I was grounded.
Alright, so that's going to be about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel and this is the first time you're ever seeing me, consider subscribing and clicking on the bell icon. That way you won't miss any future content. If you have any thoughts or questions, leave it in the comment section down below. If you have any friends that might like my content, please share it with them. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one. See ya!